Welcome to Femgeneering Women of Influence, the podcast where we highlight inspiring women who are breaking barriers, driving change, and making a difference. I'm your host, Hannah Abdelhamid, and today I am very excited to introduce a guest who is transforming the world of mental health and technology. Esther Howard is the founder of Bezyl, a company focused on improving access to mental health solutions through technology and research. Before starting Bezyl, she worked in the pharmaceutical and biotech industries, helping bring cancer treatments from the lab to patients. With expertise in research, regulation, finance, and operation, she has built a career on innovation and problem solving. But Esther's work is not just professional, it is also personal. She is on a mission to bring mental health companies together to create better solutions and make a real impact. Today, we'll talk to her about her journey, the challenges she's faced, and also how she's making a difference. Esther, welcome to the podcast. I am so happy to have you here.
Thanks so much. It's amazing to be here, Hannah.
And I just want to highlight that actually Esther is on a business trip in the Middle East, and I'm very grateful to have her, donate some of her time to help us shed light on women like herself who are making a difference. And hopefully, it will impact younger generations of women to follow into her footsteps. So, Esther, I would like to start at the beginning, going back to your childhood, how it was, what challenges have you faced, as a child or as a teenager. I am pretty sure that your upbringing played a key role in shaping your drive for success. So could you share a bit with us about your background and the journey that have led you to where you are today?
Would love to. And I think that I love telling my story because I think a lot of people end up resonating with it in their own journeys too. So, my childhood, I grew up in Northern Canada and we were in a very poor family. It's so poor that sometimes we would have to take food and even clothes from food banks and churches and local donations. I love doing toy drives at Christmas now because I was always one
Mhm.
of those children that would receive one of those toys at Christmas time when all my friends were receiving them. So it was very special to me. But when you're a child and you grow up really poor, you don't know you're poor. You don't really know any difference because you don't compare yourself to what it's like to be rich. You're a child. You're naive, and your world is what you see and what you're in at the time. But I do remember things about my childhood that I do know that at the time they weren't normal. And one of those things was my mom was very depressed and so distant from us.
Mhm.
My dad, because he worked so much trying to put food on our table, was never around. So my brother and my sisters and I, we basically raised ourselves in a very poor family, and then our journey launched from there, from poverty to,
Mhm.
like trying to figure out life as it is afterwards.
I find it very inspiring and also very honest when you say, when you're a child and you grow up poor, you don't really see, because it's true, as children, we never compare ourselves to other people. And it's, as growing up, and the fact that you mentioned that your mom was having depression, it must have been a very challenging thing to see for you as a child. And I wonder, is that why now you are working with Bezel? Was this like a driving force for you?
Well, it is now, but when I started Bezel, it wasn't, because I think that the stigma of mental health for decades
Mhm.
was so deep in the world, not just in Canada and the United States and Europe, and now I'm in the Middle East. Like, I think that the stigma for mental health was so deep that I didn't even think of it as something I could affect, because it was not normal to talk about any kind of mental health struggle
Mhm.
anyway. And so when I saw my mom being depressed, she would just be in bed all day, and I never understood that. As a child, I just felt like she was not there, not present, but it wasn't something that was part of why I started Bezel. It was after I started Bezel, then I realized and started reflecting and learning more
Mhm.
about my own childhood and the things that I had gone through and understanding generational trauma better. Then I started to realize how those things can now impact how I bring Bezel forward rather than the starting of it.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. It's very personal, and I'm pretty sure many people can relate to that. And the stigma around mental health, as you mentioned, is still very valid. We see it whether it's in Canada, whether it's in other countries around the world where originally I come from. There is no mental health issues. Like if you have any kind of depression or any kind of mental health issues, you are labeled as crazy. What you're doing is very big. Yes, we will speak about it later. I just wanted to highlight, because you mentioned your mom's depression. I was wondering if it had anything into shaping Bezyl or why you did it. But let's go back again to your childhood and your
Sure.
teenage years. You mentioned that you came from a humble family, but I am very happy and I saw that you have an MBA, you have a bachelor's degree, and I know that having access to quality education or to any education at all requires financial resources and support. And I was wondering, how did you manage to continue going to school, get your education, and even get an MBA?
This is a part of my life that I reflect on, and I'm really proud of it. And I use it as an example to encourage other people to maybe think about doing the same thing I did. Even though we didn't have access to the financial resources to be able to get the education I wanted, I ended up reaching out and I wanted an education. So I did it through scholarships and I had to work really hard to find them. And I realized that once I started to look for them, there's a lot of scholarships and a lot of support out there for people who want an education, and just don't have the means for it. And so basically, it was like pulling my education together was like putting a puzzle together, one piece at a time. And I remember I knew how to get through the first year of my undergraduate degree, and I didn't know how the next few years would be paid for, but I knew I would figure it out. And so I took the savings that I had and like the resources that I could find to get through that first year. And then I got a scholarship, a full scholarship for the second year, and that included a
That's
study
awesome.
abroad. And then I got more support, more financial support through more scholarships in the final years. And then when I went for my master's, it was the same thing. I found a graduate assistantship where I just had to work for the university and be an
Hmm.
employee, and then they paid for all of that plus some of my expenses. So I believe very strongly that when you want something like education or a certain job or whatever it is, or to live in a country that you always wanted to live in, or anything that it is, there is a way. It's just hard work.
I think it's incredible that you were able to navigate the system so effectively. And from what I hear, you actually obtained both degrees without having debt. And this in itself is a great achievement because we know how student debt could be, a big hurdle when you finish your education. And one thing that I could get is from what you just shared with us is that you are a very resourceful person. I mean, navigating the system, looking to for scholarships and so on. I really commend that, and I hope more and more people will be as resourceful as you were. Along the way, I was wondering, were there any moments when you faced skepticism or discouragement, either from people in your entourage or like even yourself, doubting yourself? I am curious to hear about it and also how you have handled them.
There's a lot. There still are. There's always discouraging moments and times where you just, I think, why am I even doing this? And wow, this is just way too hard. I'll tell you a story. So my education, growing up in Canada, I was actually homeschooled for
Okay.
many of my years, and I also went to a public school for my final high school years. But when I got out of school, I didn't know that I had a learning disability. And
Okay.
I barely got through high school. I never had good grades, and I didn't understand why because I worked so hard. So then, when I went to school, when I went to college down in the United States, I went to university. I really struggled, and finally, I went to the Students Resource Center Learning
Hmm.
Office. I forget what it was called, and they tested me, and they even sent me to the hospital for more tests in like on my brain to see what was going on. And it turned out that I had a lot of brain damage and a severe learning disability that from an old accident from when I was young.
Oh, wow.
But the reason I'm telling you that is because in order
Hmm.
to get into college in the US, you have to take those tests. So I needed to take the GMAT for my master's in business.
Hmm.
And and so I took that test and I really did bad. I did terrible. And then I took it again and I did terrible. So I literally got on a plane and flew to the college that I wanted to go to in Virginia. And I met with the dean of the program. And I went into his office and I explained to him that I wanted in the MBA program of their
Hmm.
school and why I wanted in, and told him that I couldn't get my GMAT scores up high enough to be able to even
To get
apply.
in, yeah.
And he was so inspired by the fact that I flew there and went into his office to appeal for, like, how can I make this happen? That he said, okay, if you get this particular score, I'm going to let you in, but I'm going to let you in on a contingency. You can't get more than two C's and you
Hmm.
can't fail anything or you're out. And so I did the GMAT test again, didn't get the score I needed. I did it again and I didn't get the score I needed. Finally, I did it again the third time and I got close enough that he let me in. I still never
Oh,
got the
that's
score he
awesome.
gave me. And then I got in and I still like was really struggling with this learning disability. I didn't know how to handle it. So I was failing my classes. So I went to the Learning Disability Center. Again, I can't
Hmm.
remember what they call it in the US. But anyways, and they taught me how to study in a new way. Then my professors gave me all the time that I needed to do my exams in a quiet room so that I would get through it. And I ended up not only graduating, but I got the award for the student who best achieved all the overall objectives of the program. So hard work,
Yes,
very discouraging, and never giving up.
your story is a story of dedication. I mean, I myself would have not, like, cannot imagine, traveling just to meet the dean and kind of fight for myself, like, if I can put it this way, to win a program. So it's very inspiring. You're a very dedicated woman. And the fact that you mentioned that you have some learning disability, I think this is a key point, and I'm glad you bring it up because more and more people are finding out that they have, learning disabilities. I think this is something that was not very looked in back in my days, if I could say this way. But I am glad that you're bringing it in this discussion because I want people with learning disabilities to understand that there is a way. Just you have worked very hard. You went and you found solutions in order for you to achieve your goal. So I think this is very inspirational for anyone who has a learning disability and who is self-doubting because I believe sometimes the lack of encouragement can just be as challenging and as bad as you not believing in yourself. So I think it speaks so much about how you had drive and how you were internally motivated. And I mean, look at you today. You're the CEO of a company, you have your MBA, and you're doing amazing things. And I'm so happy to have you actually today with us. Once again, I have to say it because you're very inspirational on so many levels.
Thank
So
you.
thank you, Esther. And Esther, I recall in our first conversation we had together, you mentioned about being a family who is very traditional. And I was wondering, how did that shape you, or what, did that have any kind of role on who you are right now?
Yeah, I think that actually shaped me significantly in an interest in a twist, like in a way with a twist. So
Okay.
I wanted to say in a twisted way, and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I grew up in a family where tradition, where the man is the head of the house and the
Hmm.
woman serves the man, and our roles, like we really are born to become mothers, which is amazing. There's nothing wrong with becoming a mom and taking care of a home, but that was the expectation, or maybe a
Hmm.
teacher or a nurse, but definitely not like what I currently am as the CEO of a tech company. But yeah, my traditional roles, like the way that we all acted together, like my brother had a different status than my sisters and I, and
Hmm.
my dad was, the iron fist of the family. And
Yeah.
So then, as I grew up and I had these deeper desires to be more independent and not go down the traditional road, it became an inward struggle of mine to navigate my own personal life forward and figure that
Hmm.
out. Despite the fact that I had grown up with this deep traditional teaching that men and women are different and that we should be going down as women one path and men do something else, and the two don't really intertwine. And I never received a huge amount of pushback when I started to explore ideas outside
Hmm.
of those traditional boundaries. So probably because my mom was depressed and like not present, and my dad was never there. So probably because of my independence that
Yeah.
that I didn't get the pushback. And so I ended up having to really plow through, but it was a struggle on my conscience for many years, and sometimes even still today, where I'm just like, I should have just had a family, and so like it definitely created a burning and a fire inside me to find what I wanted to do and go at it
Hmm.
with as much force as possible, and not let other people's opinions dictate that.
It's actually fascinating how societal and familial expectations, sometimes can influence us whether like to stick to the path we know or like to carve a new path for ourselves. And I think this is what you did. And despite those influences, as I mentioned, you have carved your own path and you created your own journey. So this is actually amazing. Can you share with us what inspired you to choose your professional path? And if there's any role models, mentors, or any influential figures who guided you and motivated you along the way?
Feel really fortunate because along the path, along the journey of my life so far, I've met people that have become my advocates. So after I got my master's in business, I still didn't really know
Hmm.
what I wanted to do. I had ideas. I was in my early 30s by then too, by the way. I went to school later in life, like I didn't go straight out of high school. So maybe that helped a lot of my
Hmm.
decisions. But after my MBA, I still like I was an entrepreneur at heart, but I didn't really know what I wanted to build. So as a child, I had delivered newspapers and I was really good paper girl. I got the best tips. Like I made a lot of money for a kid. I even had my own side business for a while. I sold minnows as bait to fishermen.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, it was really funny. Someday when I meet you, I'll tell you more about that story. And so I always had that entrepreneurial spirit where like if I saw a problem, I wanted to solve it, but I also wanted to make money. I wanted to like figure out how
Hmm.
to run a business. So after I got my MBA, I found a job in finance in a research organization that ran clinical trials. And I started to learn the clinical research world from the ground up, from like that financial finance position.
Hmm.
So doing corporate finance gave me the overview of like how a company runs, and then I moved from that into clinical operations and actually learning how to run a clinical trial, and
Hmm.
all of those steps that I took were all due to relationships that I had made with people in the company that helped me get to the next step or the next promotion or the next opportunity.
Hmm.
And so I started to move my career forward that way, and never with like a clear end goal, like, oh, I'm going to be the CEO of this company or anything like that. Just like I keep wanting to grow and learn. And so as I did that, I started to realize I started to develop mentors in my life or in from the professional world that helped me make some good decisions that have served
Hmm.
me very well today. And one of those mentors, he took me aside and we were talking one morning. I was talking to him about some ideas that I had for the company and how I wanted to impact them. And also some ideas that I had for myself and like potential career changes that I could make. And he said, you need to make networking just as important in your life as your job, because the
Hmm.
people that you meet, that you interact with, and that you develop a relationship with are absolutely the ones that are going to be able to give you the skills and the connections and the introductions and the advice to do whatever it is you want to do. And
Hmm.
that was really important advice. I've given it to many, many people that I now mentor, and I've really learned the art of networking. And it has taken time, it's work. I've taken his advice every single month since then. And every single month, and sometimes every day, I'm always like, who are my relationships? Who are the people that I need
Hmm.
to be reaching out to? And I don't want to like just meet everybody for the sake of meeting everyone,
Yeah.
but I want to be strategic in that. And I also don't want to waste their time or mine. So yeah, it was very like transitional without really knowing what end result that I wanted, but moving to the next step as I saw the next opportunity and found the things that I wanted to do.
You just mentioned so many like important points that I would like to revisit. So,
Sure.
first of all, when you talked about networking and how you're doing it, and I feel that your networking is very intentional.
Yep.
You're not just networking for the sake of just meeting new people. So it's very intentional. I would love us to revisit that, and if you could share more insight about it, because nowadays we go to many events, or people who are seeking jobs, they go to many job fairs and they meet people, but
Mhm.
they don't know necessarily how to cultivate this relationship to make it work to their advantage, if I could put it this way. So if you could share with our listeners, some tips, what to do, what not to do when you're networking, and how to build real relationships from the networking events you attend or the conferences you attend, I think that could be very helpful.
Yeah, well, there's two streams of networking that I use, and there's probably
Hmm.
many more out there that other people use too that they could contribute with. But one is I use the social media like LinkedIn and just general like everyday networking where meeting people organically. And then the second path is through actual conferences and events and things that you can show up to. But the key is preparation. So I
Hmm.
never show up to an event without knowing what type of people that I know I want to network with,
Okay.
whether that be and I'm very aware internally of my gaps. So what is it that I'm trying to achieve? Where are my strengths to be able to achieve that? And then where are my gaps and who are the people that can help me fill those gaps? All
Hmm.
the time. It's a very simple formula. So in my daily networking, just organically, whether it's through LinkedIn or on the street, like in general, in meetings and that type of thing, I'm always aware of the types of people that I'm looking for to get support from.
Hmm.
And when I get support from someone, I never just think about it like, okay, what can they give me? I always think like, how can this be a relationship where we can give support to each other so that it's the strongest type of support possible? Sometimes those relationships end up becoming serving service for like a short period of time, and some of them last a long time.
Hmm.
Or some of them are so impactful today and you only really need them today, but then 5 years later, because they were so beneficial, you can reach back out to them and say, hey, do you remember me from 5 years ago at this
Yeah.
event? So, the biggest piece of advice that I have for anyone who is trying to learn how to network is to prepare for networking. Because if you don't prepare and you're just randomly shooting out emails or LinkedIn messages or showing up to a conference and just walking up to booths and going to mixers and talking to people randomly, you're not going to get the full benefit of
Hmm.
networking. And you're going to get ROI from every interaction if you prepare for it.
That's great advice. I don't think many people think about preparing for a networking event, other than choosing what they're going to wear or what time they're going to show up. But yeah, I think if we treat it the same way we treat, like, let's say, preparing for a presentation where
Mhm.
we actually do our homework, you're absolutely right. It will be more beneficial and it will bring more fruits to the table, if I can say. Another thing you mentioned is mentorship and advocacy. I know that you're mentoring women, and I remember you told me how to make mentorship more successful by making a habit out of it. And I would love for you to share that story again, because it resonated with me a lot. And I think it would be beneficial for people who are either mentoring or people who are mentees, how you can make this relationship more beneficial to both sides.
Yeah, actually, I'll be quite honest with you. Don't remember what I told you, but I will tell you.
I'll
I'm
tell
glad
you
it
if
was
this is the one.
impactful. So if I miss it, tell me.
Sure.
But I see mentorship as something that is mutually beneficial all the time.
Mhm.
So when I'm mentoring someone, someone has reached out to me and they've asked me to be their mentor, or I've seen that they need a mentor and I could probably help them. I know that they don't know how to all the time take advantage of a mentor. And they don't always know how to leverage a mentor in their life, and they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know what
Mhm.
types of questions to ask. So I have, again, it's like another little formula in my life where I've managed to find a way to have a conversation with those young women that are still trying to figure all of that out, help them develop their own way of being able to capitalize on a mentor in their life and teach them like it's sometimes you have to like be very direct and ask very specific, but you always have to have a problem to solve. You can't just
Mhm.
reach out to someone randomly. You can't just say, hey, can I have 30 minutes of your time, but you don't have a problem to solve, or you don't have like a specific question for them, or you don't have a goal that you're trying to navigate
Mhm.
towards and you want their guidance on how to navigate that goal, or if it's a good idea even. So the way that I treat mentoring in either direction, whether I'm being mentored or mentoring, it's about that symbiotic relationship and having clear understanding of like what that gap is that you want to fill and how that other person can help you. You'll have to tell me if like there was another part of it that I told you.
Yes, actually, I love everything you said, but what actually kind of, stayed with me following our last conversation is that you make an appointment and you make it enjoyable. For example, you said sometimes it's a breakfast and mentorship session,
Oh,
and I
yes.
found it so clever because sometimes I mentor a lot of people as well, but most of the time it's just an online relationship, right? So we have meetings after, I don't know, at 6 p.m. or 7 or whatever, when I'm done with my day and my kids. But none of my mentees told me, Hannah, you know what, let's actually have a coffee early in the morning, because like early in the morning both of us are fresh up, our we don't have all the tiredness of the day in our bodies and our mind. And when you said that, I'm like, wow, that is very clever. So this is the story that
Yeah.
stayed with me.
I'm so glad you reminded me of that. Yeah, yeah. So, and it's funny, as a mentor that taught me that. He would schedule breakfast with me, and I asked him one time, like, breakfast is an interesting time to like have a session. Like most people, it's like halfway through the afternoon, or
Yeah.
and he was like, no, it's the best time to have this type of conversation because it's the most productive. And I was like, I am going to do that from now on. So,
Yeah.
actually, about a year ago, someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and she was local to me in Arizona. And she asked me if she could meet. And I said, let's meet for breakfast. And she thought it was great. So, we went and had a nice breakfast together.
Yeah, I love that story, so that's why it was very important for me to highlight it.
I'm glad you did.
Now, Esther, I would like to dive deep, into Bezyl, understand what is it. I gave a broad presentation about Bezyl, at the beginning of the episode, but I would love for you to talk more about it. What problem are you trying to solve? What is the dream behind Bezyl, if I could put it this way?
I love this conversation so much because it's my life.
Yeah.
The dream is to see a world where we have people are empowered to help each other and
Hmm.
build their mental strength in life. How we get there is going to continually evolve. When I first started Bezel, the idea was to make it easier for people to ask for help from each other. It was a very
Hmm.
simple thing. It was like a transactional, and it was inspired from my one of my very good friends who died of colon cancer in her 50s and left behind a 2-year-old daughter and a beautiful husband and family, and me,
I'm so
her
sorry to hear
friend.
that. Yeah.
And it was about 2 weeks before she died, maybe 3 weeks, I don't know exactly, but it was very,
Hmm.
very soon before she died. She and I were having a conversation. And she said to me, she said, everyone sees me as a cancer patient, but it's really my mental health that I'm struggling with. And that was the first time in my life that the word mental health was used in a sentence and it was normal and it wasn't like this stigmatized like mental health
Yeah.
conversation. And she said the thing that would help me the most is if I had an easier way of letting my friends and family know what I need in order to get through each day. So if
Hmm.
I'm lonely and I just want to chat, or if I need a ride to a doctor's appointment, or I need someone to take care of my daughter, or if I'm not feeling well, what would make
Hmm.
me feel better is if I saw someone reading a book to my daughter. because then I knew she's not
Wow.
being neglected. It
Yeah.
was a very emotional conversation, but it made me realize that with all the technology and telecommunications and tools in the world for communicating, we didn't have an easy way to ask for help and offer help
Hmm.
with each other. And I knew that technology was a way that we could solve that problem because humans naturally don't want to ask for help.
Yeah.
But we need it. We need help from each other. So how do we make it so incredibly simple that it's almost like you're not even asking? You're letting people know because they need to know, but it's a very, very, very simple, low stress transaction. So that's how we
Hmm.
started Bezel, with just like, okay, let's make asking for help and offering help easier. And as we did that, then we saw how people were using the very simple app that we built that made it easier to ask for help and offer help. We saw that there were things that they're asking for that that didn't exist and that we could build, and we could bring tools and start creating a
Hmm.
toolbox of support. And I'm a data person. I came from a clinical research background, so everything is about data to me. And so I started to realize that this idea that I had for building a company to make it easier to ask for help and offer help and strengthen mental health was much more than that, as a platform where we could build a
Hmm.
toolbox of support to empower people to help each other in the strongest way, not just each other, but also themselves. And
Yeah.
so I actually had this assumption that the world had more tools than it does
Hmm.
for mental health. I didn't realize that I was entering the mental health space at a time where it still wasn't really there, wasn't
Yeah.
really, really well built up. And so I just started to build it and navigate it from there. It's all the vision will never change. The vision is to empower people to help each other so that we can
Hmm.
build mental strength and improve our mental health and wellness. But how we are getting there is evolving. And what has happened in this past 12, 18 months is, as we've
Hmm.
been bringing these tools into our toolbox, I realized that the tools, as they're being developed by these amazing companies, don't have the knowledge they need to navigate the regulatory pathway. They don't know how to build clinical
Hmm.
evidence. They don't know how to build tools that are driven on data that show real efficacy and safety. And no one's helping them. So I was like,
Yeah.
our company can help them. And so we added that in, and now we have this beautiful inflow of tools coming in and output of tools going out to a lot of different communities now around the world.
That is actually very incredible. I mean, the vision for your company was to help. And
Mhm.
I mean, it's such a simple thing, and the way that you took it, you reimagined it, and you created tools to give access to people. It's just incredible. I don't know what to say other than it's incredible because you're right. It is so hard for human beings sometimes to ask help. I don't know if it's our pride, the fear of being rejected. So it's amazing, and I'm glad that your tool is constantly evolving. And I want to ask you another question, Esther. I know that you have an entrepreneurship soul, if I could say. Since being young, you've sold bait. You were the best paper girl. And like just a fun fact, I tried distributing newspapers, and I live in Montreal. And when I was a teenager, winters were not as kind as they are today. So I tried because all my friends at school at 14 decided to start distributing newspapers. And I think I lasted less than a week. I was like, no way, I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning and brave the cold and distribute it. So, chapeau to you for being the best paper girl because I wasn't. But,
In Alberta, which was cold too.
yes, I know it's super cold. I lived in Calgary for a year, and although we have Chinook in Calgary and sometimes it's milder, but when it snows, it snows. But I wanted to ask you, as an adult, starting a company, and I know that because many people I speak to, they want to start, their own business, but they don't. So how did you overcome the fear of, starting a new business, not have, because, most of the time when you start your own business, you lose your regular income if you're working, for a corporation. So you don't have your weekly paycheck or whatever, like, what is the process of when you're getting paid, but you lose that. And this could be very scary and very unsettling for people. So how did you navigate this and how did you overcome this fear to build the company that you're running now?
Oh, I love the way you worded that question because you said, how did you overcome the fear? And I'm actually writing a book called The Other
Oh,
Side of Fear.
wow, I can't wait to read it.
So yeah, this is a fantastic way to ask that question to someone like myself. So it is all about overcoming fear to do the things we want to
Mhm.
do, and how exciting and empowering it is when you actually do it. So to keep the answer simple, because we could have another podcast on the other side of fear. But to keep the answer simple, what I like to tell people is to just do it, to just simply
Mhm.
start. Even if it's keep your job for a while, but start working in the evening, start like figuring it out what you need to do in order to build a company. And the way that I forced myself to start was I just worked on a name and
Mhm.
incorporating it. I went to a lawyer and got help with like how do I set up the legal entity because I didn't know
Mhm.
how to do that. And then I just got it started and I started to write materials about what I wanted to accomplish and what I wanted the product to look like and how I wanted it to be. And I started
Mhm.
and I took a website and I put it on a website and started to talk to people about it in my networks. And I just started. I will never forget the day that I started because I said out loud to myself, I am starting my company today. And then I got going and in things kind of like my college degree, my university degree, like I
Mhm.
didn't know how I was going to get to the next year. Sometimes I don't know how I'm going to pay next month's bills. Like there's nothing easy about this journey, nothing. It takes
Yeah.
like incredible grit. But you just start. You never lose track of your vision and
Mhm.
don't freak out when you don't know how you're going to pay next month's bills. It works. Like it comes together if you do the work
Mhm.
and you just keep moving forward. The path to failure is quitting. So
I love that.
you
I
can't
love that. Yeah.
can't succeed if you quit. And my vision is so clear in my own head that getting there and to not get there is not an option for me.
Mhm.
I absolutely will get to the point where like I will achieve this vision. And I'm there, I'm getting there. Like I know we've got more than 3,000 people that are using Bezyl right now daily. Those are our like people that
Mhm.
actually use it all the time. And we have customers and we have companies and we have a global footprint, but we're still so far from getting to the real world impact that I can see that I want to achieve. So when someone has an idea, they have to just start. And it's not for everybody. So entrepreneurship is you have to have incredible grit. You have to be able to give up a lot of things in life that security of the paycheck every
Mhm.
second week or whenever it is, and be able to predict cash flow and and not buy new things. And there's a lot of things you have to give up. And so if you're the type of person that just absolutely needs that stability and you need to be able to buy the new pair of shoes, then it's not the right journey because
Mhm.
it is really hard. But if you have a vision, then you just don't stop.
I love what you're just saying, and I love that, you're very honest about saying that entrepreneurship is not for everyone. You're talking about, because, like when we say entrepreneurs, no one or not everyone will talk about the sacrifices that you need to make. And something as simple as, you cannot buy that new pair of shoes. So thank you again for your transparency and for for being so candid in sharing all this with us. I think it will be an eye opener for a lot of people who are listening. And if we can switch gear a bit, we are both women working in tech. We know there's a gender gap. There's still a gender gap in the tech industry. So I want to know from your perspective, what are the key factors that are contributing to this imbalance? And also, how do you think we can empower and encourage more women and more girls to go into career in tech or to study in the STEM?
I really am glad to see that there's more work being done now earlier in the life of young women. Because when you're a little girl, and you have a whole future in front of you, if you're taught gender roles when you're 5 years old, you're going to believe
Hmm.
those. And it's going to be much harder when you're a teenager or in your 20s to shift. So I did the shift later in life. Of course, it would have been easier for me if I had not been taught the way I was early, but
Hmm.
I was. It's okay. And so I think now that we have an opportunity in the world, and I see it happening all the time, so I think every generation is going to get better. But the way to bring more women into tech starts when they're 5, not when they're 25. And so um, the other part of it is if we have a pool of people, let's say we have 100 people in the world that know tech really well or want to
Hmm.
be in tech, 100 people, and 30 of those people are women and 70 of them are men. You can't force a company to hire 50% women and 50% men from that pool. That's
Yeah.
divided 70-30 because
Hmm.
it's not about gender inequality at that point. It's about statistically, you will
Yeah.
reduce the quality of your workforce.
Hmm.
So the answer is yes, we have to push for like encourage women to embrace tech careers like I did later in life and have been successful at it. But the answer is when children are young, introducing it in their schools and in their homes. And I'm very encouraged because I see it happening now. And tech
Yeah.
is exciting because you can go into literally any field and tech is part of it now.
Hmm.
I think that in the next generation, I don't think there's going to be a gender gap because I'm an eternal optimist, so I don't think there will be.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But you make a very good point that we need to really start early, like
We
not
do.
just wait. So I think that's a good point, and it's true. There is a change happening. It's going slower, I would
Hmm.
say, than I would want it to go, but
Hmm.
at least it's happening. And if I can go back, you just mentioned that you're writing a book, but have there been a book or a TED talk that you have watched or anything like that help shape you or help influence you or encourage you in any way? And if so, what is it? And if not, how do you get, your inner courage or inner strength, or how do you keep on motivating yourself?
I don't read a lot because of my learning disability. It's reading is actually very difficult for me, so it's not something that I do. I wish I could. I wish I tried harder. I really should just read more. So I'm gonna not use learning disability as an excuse, but I don't. So it's not a book. It's purpose in life. I know what my purpose in life is. I know what I want to achieve. And for me, the thing that inspires me the most comes from within myself. And it's hard to explain. I don't really have an external factor for that I can attribute it to, but that I see it as a culmination of external factors that I have gravitated to. So the
Hmm.
networking has been really big for me because then I've developed relationships with people that have brought me great encouragement and inspiration in certain moments
Hmm.
of my life. And then I've seen a world because I love to travel, I'm an adventurous soul. I've had given myself the opportunity to travel the world and work with people in different cultures and
Hmm.
learn from different points of view. And so I pride myself on the fact that I can work with anyone in the world. It doesn't matter who they are, what their race or religion or ethnicity or color or gender or whatever it is. So for me, I think that my strength has come inwardly, and I attribute that to my sense of purpose and the fact that I don't want to give up on it.
Again, it's amazing that your motivation is really coming within. And I love the fact that you mentioned, that you're open and you love working with people from different cultures, religions, and ethnicities, because I feel, when you put yourself out there and when you mix with different people from different backgrounds, it is so enriching. You get to learn so much, and sometimes we're just so accustomed into doing something, a certain way, and it's embedded in us that this is the right way to do it, or the easiest way, or the most efficient way. And then you have someone from a different background who can come and teach you that, what, there's a better way to do it. And it's okay,
Exactly.
it's we're in a journey of all learning together. So thank you. And I love that you said your motivation comes within, I think it's very powerful because most of us, or some of us, rely on others to find their motivation, or to push them to do something good for themselves. So it's very important to remember that motivation should come first and foremost from within yourself in order to succeed in life. Esther, if you could give us, one final word of advice for anyone who wants to start a company, or someone who wants to change jobs or apply for, a position that is higher than the one they're in, what would be your piece of advice?
Well, I would say just start because I've already said that. And I've also said, and I'll repeat, don't give up. But if I may, I'd like to add to the motivation from within part. And one of the reasons why I think that I have accomplished what I've accomplished, and I know I will accomplish my dreams, is because the second that you need external factors to validate what you're trying to do or be the way that you do it, you end up going into a victim mindset or into the mindset that it's out of your control. But it's
Mhm.
not out of your control. So when you dig deep and really learn to look inside yourself and find that internal drive that we as humans all have, we just
Mhm.
have to find it, then you become so much more powerful and you're able to accomplish the things that you want to do. So for people who want to start a company or want to achieve something in life, yes, externally, there are people that are going to be able to help us do it through our networking and our relationships and our families and whatever it is. But it has to come from within us, or we end up just being victims to the fact that we need other people to do everything for us.
That is very powerful. And it's such an important message. And I hope that people who will listen to it will not just listen to it, but will start applying it in their everyday life. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Esther, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey, the insights on mentorship, on networking, and most importantly, on finding motivation within, which I think is a very important part that will help put all the pieces of the puzzle together in everyone's life. And I truly had the pleasure to learn about your path and the impactful work you're doing with Bezyl. And I wish you the greatest success, and I can't wait to see what will be next for you.
Thank you so much.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope today's conversation has left you feeling motivated and empowered. And join us next time for another inspiring conversation with a woman of influence. Until then, keep striving, keep believing, and keep making an impact. Thank you very much.